Hello, welcome to my Friday video. And I'm here with a wonderful person who's going to be talking with us today. Her name is Pamela Booker, and she's a writer, an artist, an educator, an activist, remarkable. And I met Pam when I taught at Goddard College, and Pam taught at Goddard College. We both moved on to other new adventures in our lives as women of a certain age, right? And I'm really excited to share this time with all of my viewers in this conversation with Pam because I'm so excited that she came to visit me in Vermont. And we celebrated her birthday. And it's just been incredible. She's come to our land here in Stratford, Vermont, Kamari of the Woods. And she has a remarkable connection with the forest and with trees. And this is what we're going to talk about today. So Pam is a professor at Montclair State University in New Jersey. And that's where she resides most of the time when she's not making visits to Vermont, right? and Pam has started a nonprofit called Where's Your Tree? And this is what I want her to share with you today. And please pardon, you can hear Sam, the dog in the background. So we'll tune him out so we can talk with him. Okay, so tell us about Where's Your Tree? How did this all start?
Sure. So, Where's Your Tree started as kind of an artist-initiated eco project. And basically the premise is I was thinking about how to be more of an advocate and partner for really mostly urban green initiatives. And I live in Newark, New Jersey, even though I work in Montclair. But I was particularly interested in urban green initiatives in large cities, and also developing some funding opportunities that really do help affirm what I think of as this more sustainable planet for Black and Brown lives.
Yes.
So that was the premise. And I was involved with a lot of folks who are engaged with urban agriculture in Newark. We have a large food growers community, food justice community, and of course a need in a city like Newark. And I'm not the food grower or the farmer that you are, or maybe even some of the folks in some place like Newark who were building these green spaces from formerly dumps, right? And buying lots and transforming them. And so I really wanted to be a part of that movement, a part of that culture. And so it was about how I could sort of bring my skills to it. And that was through both, arts practices, as an educator who could, someone who's very good at kind of coalescing knowledge and information, and then figuring out how to have these kinds of exchanges with folks in these wonderful garden spaces.
Absolutely. I mean, you probably have met some amazing individuals who are doing the work, and you've been able to, offer your expertise in sort of bringing them all together too, right? And
I see it as a reciprocity. I've been a student of growing myself with green knowledge and being able to be in the company of folks who really, whose knowledge I value. And, it doesn't have to be knowledge that is degreed or, academic, but really applied and lived. And I think that when you are a part of a community that has been dealing with things like food deserts and hunger in many instances, and the lack of facilities of markets, that really can provide people with nutritious food, then you become very inventive, right, in how to do it. So I have been a community board member of an organization called Urban Agriculture Cooperative, and what they have been really outstanding at doing is coalescing local growers, bringing the foods and produce to a marketplace, whether it be like sort of independent markets. And then one of the, I think the most exciting initiatives that was launched by Urban Ag was to start an online market.
Yes.
And that all sort of came to fruition during the pandemic, right? And it's kind of one of those examples of how the pressure of circumstances transforms them into a diamond, right? And so it continues to thrive at this point. And so for me, I've been trying to search how I could be of greater service and looking at folks who are out there on the front lines. And so I've shared with you in 2019, I had already been sort of supporting my mom as a caregiver. Her health took a turn for the worse. And I found myself in a position of having to travel back and forth from New Jersey to New York to Philadelphia in long distance caregiving. And it was a really kind of tough time. So during that time, I decided to do something. I needed to do something creative, and that was really physical. And I started a podcast. So Where's Your Tree really kind of launched as a podcast where I started interviewing a lot of the eco-influencers that are part of Newark's community and artist friends of mine. And then also just kind of sharing my observations, both while we're sort of in the midst of this pandemic and this notion of how we were journeying through these very sort of tough times, that people were still figuring out how to harvest food, how to box them and get them to families that really needed the food. And there were just some really wonderful, exciting things that were happening, and I was just trying to document.
That's
those
so
events.
amazing. And let me make sure I understand. So you were involved, like really engrossed in this work while you were still caring for your mom during this period of time. And I'm guessing that this work, I mean, as a creative enterprise, a creative act of justice in the world, I mean, was it also a healing act for yourself?
Hugely. And in fact, the podcast really kind of reflected that, right? Where I would start off oftentimes just really documenting where I was in an emotional way, and aligning that though with concerns for self-care and wellness and healing.
Oh, absolutely.
And then, oftentimes, bringing in either some an interview with someone who could complement those feelings. And it resulted in my applying for a grant that then allowed me to do these 3 very specific kind of dramas through the podcast, where I got a bunch of audio equipment. I went out into the field with my masks and just interviewed a lot of folks. And it was initially, very healing for me. And then in observing the leaders in the community, many of them women of color, and as someone who, as you were saying at the top of your introduction, someone who's been very privileged and gifted with being able to come to New England in particular, but also I love beaches and had the opportunity to travel, but thinking more specifically about the places where I had relationships, one of which is Welcome Hill in West Chesterfield, New Hampshire, of course in Vermont, having taught at Goddard, and have really wonderful friends in Massachusetts. So I've spent a lot of time up at the Cape. And I'm like, I need to figure out how to bring some other folks into these settings. And so that gave birth to an initiative within Where's Your Tree called the Journey Woman Fund. And I decided that I would reach out to these organizations and these spaces and say, hey, can you donate a week?
Yeah, that's great.
I will provide a $500 mini grant to these women to provide them with, transportation or food, whatever they need.
Yes.
So that they can get there.
Yes.
So I lost mom in 21. And, but as a result of that, and I felt that her energy very much spurred its sort of evolution. And then in 22 was kind of my beta year,
Yes.
and had a few challenges going on. You know, with our home building, we had a fire, just a lot of potential distractions. But I said, you know what? I've committed to this.
Yes.
And so I posted applications, and I had 2 candidates.
Yes.
One of whom, Charmaine, who's the founder of an amazing space called Giving 1/10 Garden. She went to one of our host partners in Maryland, the Heathcote Intentional Community, which had at the time a really wonderful permaculture farm. So she got a chance to go down there, spend time with the farmer who was there at the time, share some of her wonderful knowledge
Yes.
with them, and they were able to share that with her. But mostly, the Journey Woman Fund is about getting rest.
Rest. I was
right?
thinking about that, respite and rest and restoration of the soul.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
absolutely.
and really kind of communing with nature, because I realized that's what I did during those most difficult times of, you know, just the traveling back and forth, and I'd be exhausted. And so I would always okay, how can I get to the beach for the day, or, you know, just take a walk in the park, find a space where I could sort of sit and reflect and commune with nature. And I wanted to be able to do that, and sort of looking at this politically, and particularly where Black women's experiences, Black and people of color in this country, oftentimes we are labor.
Yes.
So if that is the case, and also the activists, the ones that oftentimes are sacrificed in the front lines, how do I provide them with this space of renewal?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So you sort of think about systems and structures of oppression. A week isn't going to maybe necessarily change something permanently.
Yeah.
But it gives you the opportunity to reflect for a few days.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that you can kind of rebuild your strength. You know, rest is resistance.
Yes.
And I think that that's something that all of us should honor.
Rest
you
is
know,
resistance. I
women.
love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
So
That it's so incredible. Thank you for sharing all of that. I'm very sorry to hear about your mom, but I also feel like, because a lot of the women I speak with who are in that grieving process, like one of the things that's important is to honor, you know, the life of the person they've lost, and to take something away and give back, you know, for that individual, which it seems so clear that this was your mom, speaking through you and acting through you, and it's something that is carrying on for other women. So I just think it's beautiful, and I'm hoping that Kamaria of the Woods can also participate when we get going.
We're looking forward to that.
That'll be so wonderful. Yeah, we will be so happy to have one of your participants, you know, come here, but
to the hideaway,
to the hideaway, to a cottage, absolutely, walk in the forest. Yeah, because I love, you know, that the idea of rest is resistance is so important for us all to think about in our lives. And I mean, all of those out there watching my videos, reading my newsletter every week, listening to me ramble on, it's, you know, that ability to care for ourselves as we're caring for someone else. I mean,
it's important. I mean, it is so critical, because, you know, we've all heard that analogy of, you know, put on your, you know, literally your face mask, you know, before you can save someone else.
Yes, yes.
And we have to think about that, because caregiving and the caretaking process, it is exhaustive.
Yes.
And we see numbers and statistics, evidence of how oftentimes the caregivers end up suffering themselves from all kinds of illnesses and ailments. So, you know, it's important that we release ourselves of the guilt and, you know, honor taking care of. I see that as, you know, sort of honoring our, you know, our mothers, honoring our ancestors around this renewal. So that, again, we can come back and continue on these journeys.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, just one more thing, I just have to point out that, all of these amazing projects that you're involved in, these creative acts it's also this way, I believe, Pam, that you're finding that purpose and meaning moving on, through your teaching, through all of these interactions and community building that you've done. And that's something else that when I speak with women who are going again through the grieving process, like it's hard for them to give themselves permission to find that purpose again in life.
Yes.
And not that, like you've undertaken a huge project here. It's enormous. And it's not to say that we all need to do that or can do that, but it's always something out there in our lives that we can find a purpose for. And that I think is so essential, to healing and to moving on and not forgetting, not forgetting your mom, not forgetting the person that you've lost, but taking them with you.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that that's where you really kind of find your strength and your resilience, is honoring ourselves and caring for ourselves. I mean, I just can't emphasize that enough. And I know that you're working with many of these women around writing it out, which is something I've, started to do as well, having more recently participated in actually a caregivers festival of storytellers. And those of us that participated all wrote about experiences that each of us had as caregivers. And that was really so cathartic to be able to take this lived experience that, was in its own way, just something that sometimes we never thought we would be able to move through. We never thought we had the courage or the energy to move through it. Yet we find ourselves a year later, as so many people have told me, and probably, many of the folks that you work with in your community, it will get better. It will get better. You will heal, but you have to be an active participant.
Absolutely. And that's it too. Like you can't be your grief, you need to move forward past it. But well, thank you so much. Tell everyone here, so you have a website, and if they type in Where's Your Tree, they'll find you.
Where'syourtree.com is where you can find us, and we will be updating and doing more interactive outreach. And I was talking to Kamari about, she's been an inspiration of getting me back to getting my newsletter. And you can also find me on Instagram at Pamela Booker 19. Stay in touch, and hopefully we'll be hearing more from each other.
So great. And I will put all that information in the description of this YouTube video, so they'll be able to find you. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for talking with me, and thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great weekend wherever you are, and just be well.
Ciao.